So at that point, I think the food processing, we process very less food that we produce. Almost $13 billion worth food is wasted in India post harvest. So that's when, I started kind of exploring this space. There are these marketing terms used like carefully handpicked and all. It's not possible. Who can carefully handpick a red chili or say a turmeric, right? So what's happening in the back end, like consumers are fully blindfolded. There are a lot of chemicals that are allowed in the food processing, which you don't have to necessarily disclose on the label. Right. So that's why like we have designed a process where we use things like lemon juice or salt or something like that in pre-processing to make sure the product is safe and stays for a longer time.
Hi, welcome to the Mohua Show. My name is Mohua Chinappa and I am an author, entrepreneur, and ex-housewife. This podcast is about everything from business to technology to arts to lifestyle, but done and spoken ईमानदारी से. Hi, in today's episode, we have with us Keerti Priya-Odapalli of Co-Foods. What is Co? So Keerti is going to tell us a lot more about what is Co. But for me, I'm already sold on to this entire concept. It is about getting that ingredient done right and easy to add in all our foods. Am I right, Keerti?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely, Mohua.
Awesome, Keerti. So, welcome for today's podcast, Keerti, and tell me what was the inspiration behind starting Co Foods?
So, I come from this community where, my most of my family is involved in agriculture. So I grew up looking at agriculture. So one of the things that really stuck me was there was once my father was not harvesting red chili. So I asked him, why are you leaving it like that on the field? Why are you not harvesting? He said, you know what, I can't afford because the manpower costs are higher than what I'd make when if I harvest it at this time. So I would rather leave it on the field. So then I got very curious. This was when I was in school. So I just kept observing what is happening. Then I walk into a supermarket and it's filled with, like say a tomato ketchup. We would have seen a lot of videos and photos where tomatoes were being thrown on the roads, farmers not getting enough price, right? At the same time, I was looking at this tomato ketchup and we were consuming it a lot, right? And different kind of shelf stable products in the supermarket, then it occurred to me, why not process it? So at that point, I think the food processing, we process very less food that we produce. Almost $13 billion worth food is wasted in India post harvest. So that's when, I started kind of exploring this space, what can be done. So it was my dream to kind of set up a factory in the village and then process closer to the source. And I'm very, very big enthusiast of FMCG and marketing, etc. So I wanted to build a cool and crazy brand. So that's how it kind of started.
How amazing, Keerti. I mean, what you've done is phenomenal. And obviously, I'm definitely going to be carrying a lot of these products for my son to add into his food. He stays in London and he doesn't exactly get all the nutrients that I think one should get from all the vegetables. So tell me, I want to understand who are your primary consumers and what roles, does your product really play in their lives?
So, see, basically, the premise of the product is when I observed the industry, I figured it's a it's like a very unorganized kind of setup, right? Aapko, as a consumer, you are only listening to what brands are telling you. You don't know what is happening in the back end. Like traditionally, when we used to say, dry mango in a, backyard or under the sun, you were doing it by yourself. Now, you don't know how is it being processed, what is happening in the back end. There are these marketing terms used like carefully handpicked and all. It's not possible. Who can carefully handpick a red chili or say a turmeric, right? So what's happening in the back end, like consumers are fully blindfolded. So I wanted to bring the transparency in the whole process. And being a B Farm student, I wanted to also keep it very science forward. So what we do, we go to the farmer, we help the farmer to cultivate without using any harmful pesticides. And then we bring the produce, we use electrical dehydrators, and there's a lot of pre-processing that happens, like, uh, like the blanching we do, right? When we do the palak, when we cook palak, we put it in the hot water to make sure it doesn't lose color. So we have such steps in our process to make sure the color, nutrition, and flavor are retained. And more than anything, मैं कुछ आपको दे रही हूँ. I'm telling you, you know what, eat it for health. Say spinach powder. I don't want it to have anything harmful. It's fully contradictory to what I'm trying to say, right? If I'm giving you something that claiming that it will improve your health and filling it with chemicals is something that is a big no for me. So we have developed processes where we literally don't use, we don't even use citric acid. So if you use citric acid in pre-processing, you don't have to put it on the label, by the way. You know, these are the guidelines that many companies take advantage of, but we don't use citric acid.
Kirti, you need to repeat that line once again for our listeners.
So I'm saying there are a lot of chemicals that are allowed in the food processing, which you don't have to necessarily disclose on the label, right? So that's why, like, we have designed a process where we use things like lemon juice or salt or something like that in pre-processing to make sure the product is safe and stays for a longer time. See, it's just a bit of hard work from our side to not choose the easier route, to make sure you get a product that is safe for you, makes it convenient, saves your time, but is not, doesn't cause any harm.
So, also, which is amazing, Kirti, about you is that you work with the marginal farmers. And, I am so honored actually to have somebody as young as you and, who has this entire philanthropical attitude towards a business, because I believe that this is the way forward. This is the way a business can really grow when you are impacting the lives of people around you. So just tell me a little bit, what are the kind of problems that you face for working for the marginal farmers?
Okay, so first, why I chose this farmers is when I was like doing my research, I figured there are two big problems that farmers face. One, uncertainty. Like they do not have certainty of income, right? Like आप एक business कर रहे हो or I am doing a business, I have the freedom to set a price for the product that I'm going to sell. Unfortunately, a farmer doesn't have that. He produces for the market and market determines the price. So it's very difficult as a farmer for me to invest in my business. To, how much should I invest? Where should I invest? So it's very difficult for a farmer because there's also another added layer of uncertainty in terms of climate. It may rain, all kinds of things can happen. And second thing that the farmer faces is when we interviewed a lot of farmers, what we understood is, see, I know how to cultivate. This is something that I've been doing for some time. What is a black box for me is that I don't understand the agrochemical space. First of all, I am in a panic state, right? Like a pest has attacked my farm. So I'm running to a retailer who's selling agrochemicals, who has a margin attached to him to incentivizing to sell a certain chemical. So this person is going to push that chemical, and I'm not aware what residues it's going to leave on the crop, or what harm it's going to cause the consumer, because as a business person without enough knowledge, I'll pick the chemical, get it back, and I'll spray it on the crop. But what happens after that, I am not aware. So these are the two really biggest insights that I had. So we started working with one, demand-based cultivation. See, one approach is to save the produce that is being wasted and use it in your process. Another approach is to cultivate what the consumer needs, right? If customer is consuming beetroot, why not cultivate beetroot and make more money out of it than try to cultivate, say, paddy or tomato and wait for somebody to buy your produce. So one change that we have done is demand based cultivation. So second, what we did is we give them advisory. We help them so that we use preventive measures. See, for example, if you have a tomato field and if you put marigold flower around the tomato field, pests are attracted to the marigold and they don't affect your tomato field as much. So there are techniques which are called integrated, farming techniques. So we can use those things and develop more preventive measures than going into an emergency where, you have to put whatever chemical that needs to save the crop. So these are the two things that we have done to basically bring out the best output for the farmer as well as for the consumer.
My goodness, Kirti, hats off. I had never even thought about it. And I have to repeat this, for people who are actually growing their own tomatoes on their terraces, and a lot of people are doing their own farming, that please grow marigold flowers to avoid, insects and pests from destroying your tomatoes. Thank you so much. But it must have been really difficult to onboard farmers, right, Kirti? It was not easy. So how did you go about it? I mean, because yours will be like inspirational insight for a lot of people who are dreaming to do what you are doing. Tell us.
See, if you go to any of groups which have been traditionally exploited, they have a problem with trust, right? So they are not going to trust me. I was young, I was a woman, I was 27, I was wearing like all these fancy jeans and everything and roaming around in farms. It's difficult for them to kind of trust you. So initially, it was very difficult to onboard those few farmers. So what we did is we kind of profiled an ideal farmer. Who's that farmer who would like really enjoy associating with us? So one would be somebody who really cares about the end consumer. They do not want to, there's this thing, where we don't eat the rice we sell in the market. Like as a farmer's child, right? We cultivate separately for ourselves because everybody knows they're putting chemicals, right? Usko nahi खाना हो चीज. So I am like, I went to those farmers who are like, nahi yaar, I don't want to sell something loaded with chemicals to a consumer. Second is somebody who's risk taking, right? Who wants to like try out new things and stuff like that. Third quality is for somebody to like, who wants to stand out, who wants to like be an entrepreneur or who want to be an early adopter. Like if you get a cool phone, there'll be somebody who is buying that cool phone to kind of try out, right? There's somebody who's trying out things. So then we profiled and we reached out to such farmers. Like we have a woman farmer who's called Kavita. She's a single mother. She's very, very strong and she's very determined to not give anything that is harmful to the consumer. So people like that we onboarded. After the first set of farmers, it becomes easier.
Obviously, like Kavita, you must have impacted quite a few, rural women and changed their livelihoods. So tell us a little bit about what would be the impact, of Go Foods in their lives.
So we employ up to 70% of the workforce inside the factory or rural women. So the intention was basically, so I had a cousin who basically who was 19 years old and she wanted to kind of get educated. So I was able to like find her a college and we got an admission, but her parents did not send her and she got married at 19. And that was something that literally stayed with me for a long time. And I was trying to tell them, maybe get educated, all of these things, but people are not listening, right? So when I socha, theek hai, let me basically do something here and show you what women from your community can do. So there are two things that can happen, right? Somebody working in the factory may look at like other female employees, etc., in the admin department, me and something like that, and basically say, okay, maybe I'll educate my children, wo bhi aisa job karega, stuff like that. Or we employ somebody who is educated in the factory, and they're like, okay, if I get educated, I can also get a job, or just the show of something that is possible, right? See, a young girl growing up now knows a woman can set up a factory, a woman can be a food technologist and work. Basically, there are not many references for these young girls to look at, basically from these villages, right? Because most of the mass media in regional languages is very patriarchal in nature in the way it kind of showcases women, right? So I thought, okay, maybe this can be an opportunity for me to kind of show, even if like three, four girls like decide to, educate or, decide to do something with their life. then I think it will be a big win for me.
I'm stupefied. I mean, phenomenal. You're also a first generation entrepreneur. So, I mean, obviously you had to kind of get the buy-in, I assume, for your parents, from your parents, and there must have been challenges, right? Because as first-time entrepreneurs, mostly our parents are always very worried if you are to start something. I faced that, when I was beginning my entire reboot of my career. So, did you, face these sort of challenges, and how did you overcome them?
It was very funny. So everybody around, around my place started asking my father, did your daughter lose her job? Why did she come back? Like, why did she come back and why did she leave such a good job and come back and staying here? What happened with her? And he got really panicked and he's like, everybody is asking me these, like, why don't you like just go back and do your stuff? And he was also worried, right? Because I was roaming in the farms and all of this stuff. So he was also worried, you could have a very safe and nice life, back where you were working. I was in Mumbai before going back. So, but with time, they understood and they've been like huge support. My father, my mother, all my family actually. My father still helps us with things at the factory, etc. So I'm extremely uh, like amused, like because my father is not very educated, my mother is not very educated, but the way they support in a right, in rural India, how patriarchy is like and all of these things. But and it was also very interesting for me to see because when I went there, I was like expecting, not expecting too much support from men. Also, I thought very patriarchal hoga, but I have got a lot of support from local farmers, from say bank employees to electricity department because I think they also felt a little nice. Young girl, is doing something and something like that. So it broke a lot of my, assumptions as well in terms of how patriarchy works.
Phenomenal. So, your especially for co-foods, you dehydrate the entire thing. So, how do you ensure the nutrients, and how do you ensure, like, how do you maintain the quality of the products during the dehydration process?
So we do control dehydration. Like say, imagine you are drying something out in the sun. It takes you 3, 4 days, right? And the
Mhm.
temperature keeps fluctuating. What happens when the temperature fluctuates is the microbial organisms can grow when the moisture is again regained, or there's some structural changes also that may happen. So because we dehydrate at a constant temperature, our process finishes in 6, 7 hours. Two, there's no scope for microbial growth or toxins like that. Like if you've seen like the red dots on red chili, it's something called aflatoxin sometimes. Red chili and groundnut may have aflatoxin which causes cancer. So once a very big Indian company into chili processing approached us, they were like, you know what, our Europe consignments are getting rejected because of aflatoxin. So can you, do us an experiment with the electrical dehydration for the red chili for us? So the understanding is basically whatever they're selling in India has traces of aflatoxin. So it's a very uncontrolled market, right? So it's not very rigid. Regulatory environment is not very uh, robust here. And that's why I wanted to kind of show the consumer everything. Like what happens. Please ask brands, please ask whoever is selling you, with fancy marketing terms, please ask them what are you doing with the product? How are you processing it? Because if you're going and buying amchur from a market where it's not safely processed, and just powdering it in your facility doesn't make you somebody doing it from scratch, right? So, and I don't have to take responsibility because I didn't add anything to it. I just got amchur, I powdered and I gave it to you. So it's a very uh, unfortunately the environment is not very fair. So I'm hoping the kind of awareness that's being created now, consumers get more aware and also brands get more transparent and help users with a lot more information. So there's also this conversation happening, right? All natural is good. All natural may not be good also. For your product to be something that you're eating, right? It's not something that you're using. It's something that's going into your body. It needs to be safe. It has to be processed in a
Yeah.
certain environment. So I hope there's more awareness on food safety in the coming few years.
I think so because just very recently, a very big brand has been there's been a lot of
Yes.
conversation about it, and a brand that was used by a majority of Indians across households. And so, what are your future plans? For expanding Go Foods, the product line, the market reach. Tell us about that.
So we are trying to create a global brand which will be a go-to for anything authentic Indian ingredient, and which follows like which is a clean brand, sustainable brand with a lot of ground level impact uh, that's happening, and that is the aim. So presently, we're also doing turmeric. We are expanding our product line into more frequently used products as well. And then we are launching in US next month. We are already in UAE. In India, a most prominent segment is young mothers. So what's happening is, you understand, right? For working parents, it's very difficult to make sure the kid eats the food. So because now we have come up with this colorful concept of food, a kid who is not eating a dosa is now eating a beetroot dosa. The parents are happy because they're eating a healthy thing. So through time, if you're seeing, a lot of brands have been doing communication in a way that says, healthy food is boring. Up ice cream khao, up biscuit khao, or putting a lot of sugar in like supposedly health drinks and making kids, kind of addicted. So what we are doing here is we're trying to make good food cool, especially for the kids, by adding that colorful aspect. So I hope like we will be able to kind of lead that path and make people realize like good food can be flavorful, can be tasty, and things can be good for you, good for the body, and good for the planet as well.
How wonderful. So it is a very competitive food market, right? The industry is like constantly growing. Every day we're bombarded with new brands. So how do you see yourself staying relevant in this entire conversation?
Yes, that's actually an interesting point because we are a manufacturer. Most of these brands that are coming in are not manufacturers. So they become my customers. So say I recently got a call, somebody was like, I'm trying to make a soup formulation, but I can't get the tomato powder without maltodextrin. Maltodextrin is basically used to keep it in the powdery form. So as more clean food brands come in this segment, it also opens up a market for me.
Wow, that is fantastic, Keerti. So, also, can you tell us a little bit about the upcoming projects or collaborations that you have are you working towards furthering Co Foods?
We are speaking to an organization which is in the organic farming segment. We're collaborating with them to uh, widen our reach in the farmer kind of segment, and also use technology to to make it more efficient. On the consumer front, we are expanding globally, and in India, we are launching more products that are used in daily life, right? Like say turmeric or chili, so that we can make eating safer for you. If you use anything that's from Co, one thing you can be like extremely assured of is it will not do any harm. That is a guarantee that I would want to give the consumers.
I think that's what all consumers are going to look for, and they have no choice because with the rising cases of cancer all around us, I mean, it's frightening. So, what advice would you give to aspiring entrepreneurs, looking to make a positive impact, around their communities?
One is do as much research as possible, immerse yourself in the ecosystem. So when I started, I went to all the research organizations in agri space. It can be CRISAT, it can be CFTRI, all of these places. Spoke to a lot of experts, understood what is happening in the space, and which broke a lot of myths that I had about the industry or about food processing before. Do market validation. So basically, try with the prototype and try to get as much consumer surveys or studies done before going for a large scale. And the third thing I would like want to stress a lot, please seek help. Seek as much help as possible. Reach out to people. It's okay if you're getting 100 no's. That one S will make it very easy for you. So especially if it's a woman entrepreneur, I'll say please seek help. It is the time has come. There are a lot of government policies that are supporting women entrepreneurs. So please seek help, take as much help as possible, and yeah, all the best.
Thank you so much. So this was Keerti Priya-Odapalli of CoFoods. And before I end the session, I have to ask her what is her favorite vegetable?
Favorite vegetable? I like fruits. In our products, tomato powder is my favorite. I can literally make tomato rice, tomato makhana, tomato poha in like just few minutes, and I put it on my face also. It's really nice. So
Oh, wonderful. So
yes,
thank you so much for being on today's podcast, and we wish CoFoods all the best. And for all our listeners, and young mothers, that if you are confused about what to add in your child's food, uh, you can just head to CoFoods, which is promising you all the nutrients and ensuring that you get a clean product on your table. So thank you so much, Kirti, for being on today's podcast.
thank you so much, Mohua. It was wonderful speaking to you.
To you, our dearest listeners, you can find us on your favorite streaming services Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Podcast, and of course on all other major streaming services. With loads of love, we are The Mohua Show, where we talk ईमानदारी से.